Okay, welcome back to Knitting Nicely. You, by this point, have already finished 3 of your squares for your knitted patchwork quilt. That means you're a whopping 1/4 of the way done already. What? That's crazy. Today we're going to learn square number 4. Look at this one. This one's called the daisy stitch. It's a second ornamental stitch that you'll be learning. And most of it is really stockinette again. You see? All stockinette with these cute little daisy patterns. And the back is, of course, you can see the pearls on the back because most of it is stockinette, but you could also see the little daisy stitch on the back too, which is kind of cute. Okay, so we're going to learn this pattern today. Super easy. It's a 16 row repeat, but only 4 of those rows are rows that you actually do anything. The rest of them are just either knit all the way or purl all the way. So here we go. Okay, so for square number 4, we need to have 48 cast on. So let's see if I have 48 cast on. Last square was 47, so I may have done 47 instead. Let's count them to make sure. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46. Oh, I only have 47. Good thing I counted. Let me get that last one on there. 48. Hooray. Now, if you don't remember how to do long tail cast on, go ahead and click on the link that I'll put in the description so that you can watch the YouTube video of how to do your long tail cast on, which is what I use for all of these squares. Okay, so let's get to it. The first 5 rows are just going to be stockinette. And if you remember from last square, stockinette is just knitting on the front side, purling on the back side. Okay, so I will work the first few stitches of the knit side and the first few stitches of the purl side with you, and then I will stop the video and we'll go from there. Okay, so here we go. The first row is actually the wrong side, because remember how we said that these little nice little slants, we like to have those on the front side. And on the back of a long tail cast on, you can see the little bumps, which look like they should be on the wrong side with all the purls. So we're going to do that. We're going to do a purl row for our first row, wrong side row. All right, so remember to slip that first stitch. So we're going to slip that stitch, and then we're going to leave the yarn in front because we're doing a purl, and then purl all the way down the entire row. Okay, purl, purl, purl all the way the entire row, super easy. And I'm going to stop the video here and meet you at the end of this row. Okay, here we are at the end of our first row, wrong side row purl, for square number 4. And we are just going to purl those last 4 stitches, just like we've purled the entire row. Whoop, I can get it to purl, there we go. Purl, 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 and purl the last one too. Okay, and then we're turning it over, and the second row is just knit the entire row. So again, we're going to slip that first stitch. This time we're going to leave the yarn, working yarn in the back. As we slip it, give it a little tug so it's kind of snug against your needle, and start knitting the entire row. Okay, so you know how to knit. All it is knit this entire row. So I'm going to stop the video here, and I'm also going to kind of fast forward. I will knit the first, or stockinette the first 5 rows. So when you are done knitting and purling your first 5 rows, that'll be a purl knit purl, knit, purl. When you're done with those 5 rows, come back to the video and we will start doing row number 6, which is where we will begin doing this cute little daisy pattern. It's a really easy stitch to do, even though it looks a little complicated, like how do these go down into this hole, what? So when you're done with your first 5 rows, again, purl, knit, purl, come back to the video and we will begin doing row number 6. See you then. Okay, so now we are done with our first 5 rows. We've knitted and purled those first rows so that we have ended up with a stockinette stitch with knitting on the front side, purling on the back side. And now we're all set up to start row 6. Row 6 is where we start doing the cute little daisies. All right, so first we're going to slip the first stitch. Okay, and then we're going to knit 1. Then we're going to do a daisy stitch. Okay, that's noted as a DS in your written pattern. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to insert our right needle into the loop 3 rows below the second stitch on the left hand needle and pull up a loop. Phew! That's a lot. So let's get that broken down so that you understand it. Okay, this is your right needle. We're going to insert that needle into 3 loops below the second stitch on the left hand needle. So this is stitch number 1 on the left hand needle, stitch number 2 on the left hand needle. And these are the V's. Let me get my pencil here. These are the V's under that stitch. You see those little V's? Okay, so we got to count to find the third loop. Okay, 3 rows below the second stitch. Okay, so that would be 1, 2, 3. So we're going to stick our right hand knitting needle into that little V. Okay, you can see it's a nice little hole right there because we've got our gauge is really big on these big needles. It's easy to see. So let's count those again. That's 1, 2, 3. All right, so we're going to insert our right hand needle right into the middle of that V. Okay, and then you're going to scoop up this yarn behind, just like as if you were going to do a knitted stitch. Okay, you're going to pull up a loop. I like to kind of hold that on there so it doesn't fall off as I'm pulling it through. And you pull that loop through that little hole. And you're going to let it slide so that it pulls up a nice big loop. Because as you can see here, these loops are pretty big. We want them big so it doesn't cinch up our work. Okay? Then the second thing you're going to do is you're going to knit 2 stitches from your left needle. Okay? Now don't pull this super tight. We don't want it tight against your knitting needle like you normally do. You want it nice and loose. Okay, because we're making that daisy stitch. All right, so just leave it loose, and then we're going to knit 2 from here. So there's 1, and there's 2. Okay? Then the next thing is to insert the right needle into the same stitch as before and pull up another loop. Okay? So here we go. We're going to insert our right hand needle into that same hole that we did for the first loop. And we're going to pull up another loop. So wrap that around there, kind of anchor it with your forefinger and pull it through. And again, we want it to be loose so that it sits at the height of this row and it's not pulling down. That would be bad. You want it nice and loose. Okay, then you're going to knit 2 again from this left hand needle. So let's move those up so we can knit them. That would be 1 and 2. Okay, just leave everything nice and loose for right now. Okay, now you're going to do the same thing one more time. So you're going to go backwards into it, so it's a little bit tricky, but you can do it. So insert your right needle back into that same hole as the first 2 loops, down into it, and pull up a loop again. Okay. It's a little bit tricky this time because it's behind. Got it? All right, now pull it up so that it's loose. And that's your daisy stitch. Woohoo! We finished our first daisy stitch. Well, anyways, halfway. The other half will happen when we go on the wrong side row, which I'll show you next. And then when we're done with this one. Okay, so we're gonna do that again so that it's completely clear. But we gotta make a space between the 2 daisy stitches because they're not squished together. They're not daisy stitch, daisy stitch, daisy stitch, daisy stitch. It's apart, okay? So we're gonna do some knitted stitches in between. And our pattern says to do 6 knitted stitches in between our daisy stitch, okay? So let's do that. And make sure that you don't pull this last loop tight. This would be bad. Do not do that. Leave it loose. All right, and you can kind of anchor it with your finger so that it doesn't pull tight accidentally. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, now it's time to do another daisy stitch. So we need to find where that little hole is that we're supposed to put all of our little daisies into. Now remember, it's the second stitch on your left hand needle, 1, 2, and it's 3 stitches down, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're gonna find that little hole. We're gonna pull up a loop. Remember, we gotta leave it loose. You can anchor it when you're doing your next 2 knitted stitches. There's 2 stitches that we knit in between each big loop. Okay, so there's 1, and there's 2. Now we're going to pull up another loop in that same hole. So stick your left hand needle into that hole, anchor it with your right hand, and pull it up through the hole, and let it loose. Okay, nice big loop. Anchor it with your right hand forefinger, and knit 2 more stitches. Make sure it's nice and loose. 1, 2. Okay, and 1 more big loopy stitch for our daisy. So back into that hole, pull up another loop, pull it loose. So it makes a nice daisy. And then we're gonna do our 6 knitted stitches again. Okay, make sure you keep that loop nice and loose. This loop right here. So here we're gonna do the 6 knitted stitches between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so we've got 2 daisy stitches so far. All right, let's do some more. I think that this first one we're going to be doing 5. Yep, there's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we've got 3 more to go. Count 1, 2, and down. 1, 2, 3. Put your needle in through that V. Pull up a loose loop. Okay, nice and loose. Nice and loose. Knit 2. Whoops, that slipped right off of there. I'm gonna knit 2. 1, 2. All right. Then we're gonna pull up another loop. Sometimes I slide these down so that they don't have a tendency to slip off my left needle when I'm working my little loops, okay? So we go down, pull up your second loop for this stitch. Let it nice and loose. Knit 2 more between. And then we gotta grab 1 more loop for our 3 loop daisy. So put it back into the hole, grab another loop of yarn, bring it through, and pull it loose. Sometimes I give this a little tug here just to make sure that my loop, all my loops are at the same level as the rest of my knitting. Okay? Make sure you leave that loop nice and loose before you head on to your knit 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, let's do another one. We got 2 more to go. 2 more daisy stitches. So here's, we're going to count across 1, 2, and then down. 1, 2, 3. So push it in, pull up 1 loop, let it loose. Okay, and then we're going to knit 2, 1, 2. Then we're going to go down again in the same hole, pull up another loop, pull it loose, and knit 2 more. 1, 2. Okay. 1 more big loopy. Go through that same hole, pull up that last loop. That last one can be a little tricky. Just work with it and pull it up nice and loose. Give it a little tug, make sure everything's good, and then move on to your knit 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we have 1 more daisy to go. And here we go. We'll count across, 1, 2, and down. 1, 2, 3. Put your needle into that hole, pull up a loop, pull it nice and loose, knit 2, oop, keep that loose, knit 2, 1, 2, pull up another loop, pull it nice and loose, whoop, try not to let your stitches fall off your left needle. Okay, pull or do 2 more knitted stitches, and then our last loop. Go in through that same hole. Don't let your stitches fall off. Move them down a little bit more. Pull up that last loop, nice and loose. And then our pattern says repeat last 2 stitches. Oh, guess what? We have 2 stitches left. Awesome. So, and it says to knit those last 2 stitches. So make sure to leave that last loop nice and loose, and then knit your last 2 stitches. There you go. You finished your first row of daisies. Ta-da! You should have 5 daisy stitches on your needles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now we're ready to set up to make those daisy stitches stay, and to also get our stitch count back to the right stitches. We should have 48, but right now we have a lot more than 48 because we pulled up those extra loops. Okay, so now we got to get our stitch count back to 48. So here we go. On the wrong side, the purl side, we're going to slip 1, purl 1. So slip that first stitch, and then purl 1. And now you see where we have our loops that we pulled up. You can see them on this back side, okay? We need to reduce the number of stitches we have, so we're going to purl 2 together and then purl 1. We're going to do that 2 times. I think it's 2 times, might be 3 times. Let's work it. Okay, let's see. We're going to purl 2 together. Do you see that? I stuck my needle into the first 2 loops, 2 stitches, and purled them together as 1. Okay. Now I only have 1 stitch over here. And then I'm going to purl 1. And then I'm going to stick my needle back in through 2 stitches. Purl them together as 1. Like that. And yes, we do need to do that twice, okay? Purl 2 together, purl 1. Purl 2 together, purl 1. And then we need to get that last daisy stitch off. That's the little loop that we pulled up right there. So we're going to do 1 more purl 2 together. Okay, so now we've got this section back to the right number of stitches. And now we're going to purl 5. Okay, purl 5. Count them with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And when you're knitting, you can see the kind of a break between your purl stitches and where your daisy stitch is. And that's kind of a visual signal to you to do that purl 2 together part to get the stitches back to the right count. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to purl 2 together, purl 1 2 times. So purl 2 together and purl 1. Purl 2 together, purl 1. And then we need to do one more purl 2 together. Okay, now we're going to do 5 more purls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, we got 3 more of those daisy stitches to get the counts back to the right number of stitches on our needles. Let's do it. We got a purl 2 together, purl 1, purl 2 together, purl 1, and then one more, purl 2 together, and then purl 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see that very obvious break. It almost looks like a big gap. Okay, now we're going to do another. So purl 2 together, purl 1, purl 2 together, purl 1, and one more purl 2 together. Okay, and then we got one more purl 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it says to repeat till we get to the last 9 stitches. Let's see if we have 9 stitches left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, we do. And actually that stitch is kind of over the other one. So let's count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so all we have to do is purl 2 together and purl 1 3 times. So let's do that. Purl 2 together, purl 1, purl 2 together, purl 1, purl 2 together, whoop, and then the last one is a purl 1. Ta-da! Let's look at our beautiful work. Hey, look, we have little daisy stitches now. Isn't that cute? And you should have 5 daisy stitches, and we want to make sure that we have 48 stitches on our needle again. Make sure that we got all those stitches back to the right number. So let's just go ahead and do a quick count to make sure we have 48. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48. Yes! Okay, so now the next 6 rows are just stockinette. So this is a right side row. We will knit this row, then we'll turn it over and purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. So that's 6 rows of just stockinette. And since you already know how to do stockinette, then I am going to stop the video, and you can stop your video or pause it. And when you're done knitting the next 6 rows of stockinette, then go ahead and unpause, and we will go on to the next daisy stitch row, which is row 14. Okay, so you're going to do rows 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then come back here for row 14. See you then. Okay, so at this point you should have 13 rows done on your pattern so far. And the first 5 rows should be stockinette, these 5 rows. And then you did a daisy, 2 daisy rows, front of the daisy and then the back of the daisy. And then you should have done 6 more rows of stockinette. So we should have 13 rows total on our square done. Okay, so now on row 14, we're gonna do another row of daisies. But these daisies are gonna be offset from your previous daisies so that we get a nice little pattern. Okay, so we're only gonna be doing 4 daisies on this row so that they land right in between your other daisies. Okay, so here we go. First thing we got to do is we're gonna slip one and then knit 6. So here we go. Slip 1, knit 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now we want to make sure that this daisy is landing right smack in the middle of the other ones. So we're going to make a little check. We're going to check our work and make sure that we've got it right. So here's the end of our first daisy right here. And here's the end of our second daisy right here. So we're going to count into those rows to make sure that our next daisy up here is going to land right between them. So here's one V on this side and one V on this side. There's another V on this side and another V on this side. So this is the row that we're going to make our daisies in. So let's follow that up, and guess what? It is. That's good, because we come in 1, 2, and then go down 3. All right, so let's do that. Let's make our next daisy. 1, 2, and down. 1, 2, 3. Stick the needle into that hole, pull up a loop, make sure it's nice and loose. Adjust your yarn as needed. Make sure it's loose, and then knit 2, 1, 2, then put your needle back into that same hole, pull up another loop, make it nice and loose, knit 2 more, 1, 2, and then do your third loop for your daisy, put it back into the same hole, pull up a third loop, nice and loose. Okay, so now look, that's right in the middle of these two. That's perfect, hooray! Okay, now we've got to do our 6 knitted stitches in between our daisies, so let's do that now. Keep that one loose and knit 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, now let's just check to make sure that our next daisy is going to go right in the middle of these two. So here's the end of your second daisy, and here's the beginning of your third daisy. Now let's count in. Here's V number 1 on this side, and here's the V number 1 on this side. I'm going to go in again. 1 V on this side, 1 V on this side, and that's where our daisy for this row should end up. And let's follow it up to make sure it's right. And yes, it is. Hooray! So let's make our next daisy. Count in 1, 2, go down 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're going to pull up a loop. Nice and loose. Knit 2, 1, 2, go down again, pull up that loop, nice and loose. Knit 2 more. And go down a third time, pull up a loop, and there you have your 3-leaf daisy. Okay, let's do those 6 knitted stitches in between again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, we only have 2 more daisies to go. Excuse me. Let's make sure it's in the right place. This time we'll follow it down. Okay, so that's where it is, and let's go backwards. Let's go 1 on that side, 1 on that side, 1 on that side, 1 on that side. And we're at the edge of this daisy, and we're at the edge of this daisy. Hooray! Yay! It's in the right spot. It's always good when it comes out right. So 1, 2, then down. 1, 2, 3. Put it in the hole. Pull up a loop, pull it loose, knit 2 more, 1, 2, go down into that hole again, pull it up another loop, shoop, make it loose, knit 2 more, 1, 2, and a third time, go down into the same hole, pull up a loop, shoop, make it nice and loose, make sure you don't pull it tight, that would be bad, get it nice and loose in there. and do your next 6 stitches of knit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There you go. Okay, we only have one more daisy stitch. Let's make it. Oh, we gotta check to make sure it's in the right spot. I always like to check. This is the one we're going to do right here. This row of these. One on this side, one on this side. One on this side, it's at the edge, good. One on this side, it's at the edge, good. Okay, let's do it. Cross 1, down to 3. 1, 2, 3. Put it in, pull up a loop. Loosen it, knit 2. 1, 2, go down, pull up a loop, pull it loose, knit 2. 1, 2, and go down a 3rd time, pull up a loop, pull it loose, and now we're at the end. Let's see, what does our pattern say? It says to repeat to the last stitch, so that means we should have only 1 stitch left. Oh, that's because we haven't finished our pattern repeats. Our pattern repeat is to daisy stitch and knit 6, and we haven't done our knit 6 at the end of our pattern repeat, so let's do our knit 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And guess what? We have 1 stitch left, just like the pattern says. Yay! And knit it. Okay, so you have completed your 2nd row of daisies. The first part anyways. Now we have to go to our 2nd row to make those stitches back to the right number of 48. There's too many stitches on our needle now because of all those daisies we made. So now we're going to go back and fix that by purling 2 together where we need to. So here is row 15. We're going to slip the first one, purl 1, then we're going to purl 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you remember, on our first row of daisies, we saw that gap that kind of gives us a visual signal that we need to start our purl 2 together part. Okay, so let's do our purl 2, purl 1 twice. Purl 2, purl 1, purl 2, purl 1, and then the one more purl 2 together. Then we're going to purl 5. Our stitches ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, there's the gap. We know we need to start doing our purl 2 togethers. Purl 2 together, purl 1. Purl 2 together, purl 1. Purl 2 together. Okay, now we're going to do our purl 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's the gap. That means we got to do purl 2 together, and then purl 1. Purl 2 together, purl 1. Purl 2 together. Wow, that one was loose. Got a little overzealous on that one. That's okay. Then we're going to do purl 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's the gap. We have one more purl 2 together part. So let's do it. Purl together, purl 1. Purl 2 together, purl 1. And one more purl 2 together. And then our pattern says to repeat it to the last 6 stitches. Let's see if we have 6 stitches left. Yes, we do. Hooray. And it says to purl those last 6 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Check it out. You just completed all 16 rows of this pattern repeat. And now you just need to go back to row 1 and do it all again. And if your gauge is the same as mine, then you're going to do it all again 2 more times. Okay? So if you look at the one that I've completed already, I've got 1, 2, 3 full pattern repeats. And then I've got a half of a pattern repeat up here. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video. You can go ahead and work those 2 more of these so that you end up with 3 of these 16 rows. and then I will start up the video again and show you what to do next. See you in a few. Okay, so I did not obviously knit another full square, but you should be all the way up to this point in your square. You should have 1, 2, 3 pattern repeats, and you should be right here and you should have finished row 16. Okay, so I am at that point on here. If we just line this up right here, okay, I'm at that point. Then I am going to do repeat rows 1 through 13 again, not all the way to 16, just only to 13. So right before you would start another daisy row. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video. You are going to work, let's see, I'll have you work rows 1 through 13 again. Okay, so you're just going to repeat this section again, just this part. Okay, and when you get to the end of row 13, which should be right here, so you should have your last row of 5 daisies, and you should have a little bit of stockinette at the top. When you get to that point, stop the video. That should be the end of row 13. Stop or start up the video again, and I'll be here and I'll show you how to do your bind off. Okay, see you in a little bit. Okay, so now you have finished your square. You've done, let's see, you've done repeats. You've done 1, 2, 3 repeats of the pattern, plus another half of the pattern, a little bit more than half. So you should be at row 13. You should have just finished row 13. And if you were doing more, a longer, a bigger square, you would, the next row would be another daisy row, but we're not doing a bigger square. We are doing a 12-inch square for our knitted patchwork quilt. So this is where we'll stop. And the reason why we did that extra few rows of stockinette is to balance out the top at the bottom. Okay, so now all we have to do is bind off. That's it, and then our square is finished. Our 4th square is finished. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna bind off, and like square number 3, it's the same thing. It's just a very simple stockinette bind off. It's not stretchy, so if you have trouble making sure that your stitches, your bind off stitches are nice and loose, you may want to go up a couple sizes of needle as you're binding off. You know, just switch out the tips of your needle, or you can even use a straight needle. If you have a straight needle that's a couple size larger than size 10, which we're using, you can go ahead and just use that that larger needle to bind off. I am fine with making sure my stitches are loose, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the same needle. So here we go. We're going to slip that first one, and then we're going to knit, and then we're going to bind off the stitch by pulling it over like that. And we're going to do that all the way down the entire row, just like in our square number 3. So we knit a stitch, pull the old stitch over, knit a stitch, pull that stitch over, knit a stitch, pull the stitch over. See how I'm knitting really loosely? I'm not pulling it snug against my needle. I'm just letting it loose. Okay, not super loose, not like our daisy stitches. But you know, reasonably loose, just slightly looser than I would if I was doing a knit row. So knit that, pull it over, knit, pull it over, and you're going to do that the entire length of your of your row, so that at the end, set this aside for a sec. At the end, you will have this nice braided look at the top of your square. And then at the end, you bind it off just the way you did on square number 3. You pull that last loop out, cut it off, and keep on pulling it out until you have a tail at the end, just like at the beginning. And then you'll weave that tail in the back, just like I did on this one. And you can see, you can't even tell where that weave in is because I used the, you know, in, out on the bumps. In, out, back. If you want to know how to weave in, I will drop a link in the bottom of the video in the description so that you can also weave in hidden hide your tail in by weaving it in this way. It's a nice little finish off, and it will not come undone because of it goes this way and then it comes back on itself. So there's no way for it to unravel and become undone. Okay, so you have finished your square number 4. Yay! Congratulations! Okay, I'm so proud of you. You finished square number 4. Guess what that means? We're now a third of the way done with your knitted patchwork quilt. I can't believe it. Third of the way done already? That's impossible. But you've done it. So this one is the end of square number 4, where you did the cute little daisy patterns. Congratulations. I bet you're super happy with this pattern. I know I am. I think it's the cutest ever. So you finished your square number 4, and let's do a little review, okay? So square number 1, you did a cute little moss stitch. You learned how to do knits and purls in the same row, switching from knit to purl to knit to purl on the same row. That was super fun. And this one is fun because it's reversible. The back looks the same as the front. Okay, and your second square, you learned how to do a little checkered pattern. Some of the squares are stockinette with knit on the front and purl on the back. Some of the squares are seed stitch, which is a knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. And this is also a reversible pattern. The front looks the same as the back. Bum, bum, bum. Always fun to do reversible patterns. Your square number 3 was your cute little bobble stitch pattern, where you learned how to do your first ornamental stitch and how to do a cute little bobble that pokes out like a little piece of popcorn, or little polka dots all over your pattern. Very good. And your 4th square was, of course, today's daisy stitch, which is one of my very favorites ever. So there you go. You have 4 patterns finished. You're ready to move on to number 5. Now, I recommend for these next 4 patterns to use kind of a lighter color of yarn. In my videos, I kind of use like a sort of a lilac color. That's good for showing textures. And so I chose a medium sort of color of yarn. But for these next 4, we're going to be doing things like lace work, where there's a little bit of holes in your knitting. And so having a lighter color of yarn is nice, because then you can see those little holes really nicely. So the next 4 squares we'll be knitting with this light gray color, so that you can see a break between each set of 4. There will be 3 sets of 4. The 4 lilac colors, the 4 light gray colors, and then the last 4 are a nice deep purple. Because purple's my favorite color. Okay, so I'm super excited for you. I'm super proud of you for finishing your first 4 squares. That's a milestone. Woohoo! Good for you. And we are ready to start square number 5. See you there.